so we have our object and now we are ready to make our mold on the object. So then we can steam the wax out and then fill that void with glass. But we need to figure out how the glass is going to flow into the object first. So there are objects that are maybe quite clear where you want the glass to flow in, but with an object like this, pretty much all of the surfaces have been touched or have some detail that I'd like to preserve. But I still have to make a decision about obscuring some bit of detail so the glass can flow into a point. Do I want it to flow in here and sort of obscure a little detail in the top? Do I want to obscure the detail in the bottom, on the tip of the nose? What do I want to do? There are a couple of considerations that you want to make. The first is, what do I want to obscure? You know, where do I want the sprue to come off? And I'll show you sort of what that means in glass. So here's a glass object that we can look at in class with the sprue still attached, and you can see that this is like a very weird object where someone's chin, it's Kayla's, someone's lips and chin have been welded to someone's lips and chin. It's Kayla's, so it's a sort of double lip chin situation. But really what I want to focus on is this, which is the sprue. So the sprue is where the glass fed into the object. So if you can imagine it in the kiln in this orientation with the glass flowing in here, filling, and then this area eventually needs to get cold worked off and polished or somehow sculpted so it's a finished object. So what we need to do for this object is figure out where the sprue goes. So for this object, I know that I don't really want to injure any of the surfaces. So instead of having a natural sprue place like that, I'm going to make a decision that is smart for the way the glass is going to fill, which is that I want the glass to fill the nose first. So it'll fill here. So if the glass drops in, it'll fill here and then fill all the way up. And I think that this orientation with the sprue here will allow me to have the most success filling with the fewest vents. And we'll talk more about what vents are when we learn how to make our molds. So that means that I want to put my sprue here. And I know that I just want there to be a little connection, but I still want the reservoir where the glass flows in to be pretty big. So I'm going to use two objects that we have in the studio to make this happen. One is this little silicone baking tray. You can spray a little mold release in here and then fill these with wax. And then they pop out these great little sprue shapes. Notice that it's round up here, so you can sort of choose the diameter that you connect to your object with. It can be as small as a nickel, no smaller. So that's the parameters here. And then we also have this other silicone cup similar to this one. I'm going to choose a bigger one so we have more of a reservoir. And then you can also pour wax in here, let it cool down. And what's nice about these is it does have a flat spot, so you can easily connect things. So I think that my sprue shape is going to look a little like this. I'm going to connect these two objects, make this flat, and then connect that to that, and that should be my final sprue. So the first thing I'm going to do is how should I do this? I think the first thing I'm going to do is connect these two. So I'm going to just get this warm and get this warm and stick them together. I'll be right back. I'm going to do it over here on the So I used the hot plate and I just heated the bottom of this up and the opening side of this up, and I stuck them together. Now I'm just gonna use, I'm gonna warm up a little weld here. This really doesn't have to be pretty because this is not my object, right? This is purely This is purely a tool to help get glass in. So I'm going to warm these up between my fingers because I made them a little while ago and they're cool now. And I'm just going to help that connection be a little bit stronger by putting some bits of glue, and I'm also going to negate that right angle. So now it's a little bit smoother, and that'll make the glass flow a little nicer. It looks a little bit like a breast. Not intentional, but fine. So just popping this little wax glue around, helping it here. Doesn't have to be pretty, just has to stay fairly connected. All right, should be, yeah, that's good. Do. All right, really not a boob, very weird. All right, Madeline, I don't know if you can do anything about that, but help me. So now we need to do this. And so what I'm gonna do is take this back over to the hot plate. I'm gonna flatten that down just a little bit so it's about the size of a nickel. And then I'll come back and I'll show you how to attach it. All right, so now you can see that it's flat. It's about the size of a nickel. And I am going to use these skewers to plunge into here, which will also mechanically hold my wax on. So then it'll be a little easier for me to make them connect. So I'm going to angle them in so they make like a little bit of a prong that way. Is that right? No, I'm gonna put them straight up and down. Sorry, the prong is for something else. So straight up and down, I'm gonna press them in all the way through. And ideally I want 3, but it really depends on sort of the structural stability here. Two is maybe all I'm gonna get. And then I'm gonna snip these down. I only need a few millimeters, so maybe just like, I'll snip them down so it's just like the length of my fingernail. I'm gonna go grab some tin snips. Great. So not very much, just enough to sort of grab on. Then I'm going to make sure that my nose, the part that I want to be the very bottom of my mold, is straight up and down and also centered. And I'm going to press. This is a solid object, so it's going to take a little bit of pressure to press in. But now it's pretty good, right? Now I don't have to sort of fuss with balance, and all I have to do is make a clean connection here. So I'm going to use my little welding snake, and I'm going to use my wax welder to make that connection nice. And I'm going to pay attention that the connection against my object is pretty, and then I just don't give a bleep, bleep, bleep about the connection from the weld to the sprue. So I'm connecting it to the sprue first, being kind of, you know, gross about it, just making it happen. It doesn't have to be pretty, just curving that wax right around. If I need to nudge, I can. Going to be a little tricky here because there's a slight overhang, but I'll just be careful not to touch that lip. I don't care about this sprue. You can be ugly. Just kidding, you're beautiful to me, but you don't have to be tidy. And then I've completed the circle, so I'm just nipping off that bottom. Good. Good. So now I have the sprue attached, but it's like pretty gross right here. I'm not gonna use, well, I'm gonna start using the wax welder, but really I wanna be careful not to make it ugly. So if you're feeling uncertain about the wax welder, resist and go straight to your cold tools. So I'm doing a bit of a push and carve. It doesn't have to be welded actually, it just has to connect. Oh, the tricky underside. Don't fight me. So that's pretty good. I'm going to spend a little bit more time tidying this up, but that is the whole deal with a sprue. Each object is going to want a slightly different kind of, or different shape and different location for its sprue. So that's really a troubleshooting on the ground kind of thing. And this very weird monstrosity will eventually become glass, and then we'll cold work off the part that we don't want, and then we'll have just this magnificent object. Thanks for coming to my YouTube video. You guys are great. Bye.